Well, good morning. We're on tape now. I'm Patrick Freeman. I'm the host today, and today is January 12th, 2011. And our speaker today is Judy Reeves. And Judy is a writer's writer, an author's author, a professorio of words. And she is going to talk to us about today is to bring out the hidden writer in all of us. And there are actually a lot of us here and a lot of members of the Edge who are published authors, but we can always use a tune-up. Her latest book, actually it's a revised book, is called A Writer's Book of Days. And it's a spirited companion and lively muse for the writing life. Judy has also done... Boy, if I had my glasses on, she's done a bunch of other books, which we'll talk about later. Judy, would you like to start? Our speaker, Judy Reeves.
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everyone. I'm telling you what, I love your energy. I'm not a morning person. So getting up and coming here this morning, and I'm kind of bleary-eyed and so on, but you are just alive and sunshiny and so positive and supportive of one another, and I just want you to know that I really appreciate that, and it's just it just kind of flows through, and I got some of it too. I'm feeling really good too. I especially want to thank Adrienne for inviting me. She does such a great job of doing the programming, everything just right, notes and phone numbers, and you won't get lost and all of this. It's just excellent. And so, and I wish I had been here Friday night, whatever it was you did. I'm sorry I missed that. First thing I want you to do before I even start talking about writing, I want you to write down, I left some writing practice paper. You can see that we're going to probably do a writing exercise later on. But I want you to write down a detail that you noticed this morning. A detail that you noticed this morning. Write that down. And it just a phrase. It doesn't have to be a whole long sentence. And the thing about details is that we're looking for a concrete detail. So we want some specifics. I don't want to hear that the sunrise was beautiful. I want to know what you noticed about that beautiful sunrise that made it beautiful to you. If, in fact, you thought it was. Maybe it wasn't a beautiful sunrise. So the kind of detail that has specificity in it, usually it's going to be some kind of sensory information, some sensory details. Sometimes once you get started, it's hard to stop, too. One detail isn't going to be enough. So you keep going. I'm a novelist, so lots of details, many details. So Patrick said that we all have a book in us, and I don't know about all of us having a book in us, but what I do know is that we all have stories in us. You know, human beings are natural storytellers. It's part of our DNA. When something happens to us, we immediately tell stories to one another. You know, we see each other in the green bean aisle of the grocery store, and we start telling our stories. We email. Some people are not. We were talking about writing this morning and not writing. He says he's only writing emails, but we're emailing those stories, especially when something big happens. When something big happens, the more we tell that story, the more kind of power that is taken out of that event, however traumatic it is for us. And this is why often writing is used in healing. I know many of you are psychologists and therapists, and you know that writing can be used as a way of healing also, as a way of working through trauma, as a way, actually, studies have shown that writing about traumatic events or stressful events will actually increase the T cell production in your body and lower the indicators of stress. So writing is healthy. It's a healthy thing to do. And telling our stories is how we connect with one another. We're stopping. I'm taking off my earring. Click, 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 click.
They're clicking.
I hear it clicking.
Okay.
I wondered what that was.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
I thought it was... So Adrian said I get to be on YouTube in about a week, and now I'm going to be doing all my... Now, am I back on again? Now I have to come and get this thing fixed again?
You're fine.
This is a story I'm going to tell, right? So when I go home and they say, hey, how'd it go up in Orange County at that meeting today? I'm going to say, well, you know, there I was, and first of all, I did this, and then I got this thing sticking out my back, and then my earring was clicking, and so I'm going to tell this story all about it. But what I wanted to say about telling stories and how important it is, I think it's our stories that connect us as human beings. This is what makes us different from others. And so as long as we are telling our stories and connecting to one another in this way, then I think our species will have a chance of survival. If we stop telling our stories, stop connecting in that way, then we lose that touch. I think we'll just kind of shrivel up and go away. So all of those stories, we just keep telling those stories and telling them to one another, and we can't help ourselves. What we want to do as writers is learn how to craft those stories so that they become not so much our personal stories, but they take on then a broader, wider, more universal, more global aspect so that we can identify with each other in that way and connect in that way. When we do that, we gain compassion and we learn more about one another. And when we start with compassion, then love can't be far behind. And so I think this is important for the human race. I want to read the epigraph from the book. This is Norman Cousins. It's a quote from Norman Cousins that I first found, probably 25 or 30 years ago, and I put it on a picture of a frame and gave it to my husband, who was also a writer. And it has inspired me. I hang it over my writing desk all the time, and I've used it as the epigraph for the book. And it's about the writer and how important writing is to the world. The writer, perhaps more than any of his fellow artists, has access to the human subconscious. His words sink deep, shaping dreams, easing the pain of loneliness, banishing incantations and omens, keeping alive the memories of the race, providing intimations of immortality, nourishing great anticipations, sharpening the instinct for justice, and imparting respect for the fragility of life. These functions are essential for human evolution. And then I write what I write, and sometimes it is so small, it feels like, that I can't live up to this. I can't live up to the survival of the human race with my writing, and so I get intimidated, and so what happens is I stop writing, and I stop writing because I get scared of it. I get scared of my own voice. I get scared of not being able to say what I want to say. And so this morning, and I know this happens to other people too. I've been teaching writing for something like 25 years and leading writing groups. I started leading journal groups, and now I teach writing at wherever they ask me to teach, actually. I'll go anywhere. So what I see is this happens to a lot of us. We are writers who will get started writing and then we move away from it. We back away from it. You were talking about your Vietnam stories, that we start feeling those feelings and it gets real scary. Writing is, if anything, if a word that we would use to describe what writing is, Cynthia Ozick said, we would say it's a courageous act. Telling those stories is very courageous, and we get to the part that is so scary for us, and it's just so much easier to back away from it, isn't it? And sometimes my students will say, when I say, just start writing, just write anything, and when they start doing this kind of writing practice, what comes up are those stories that they've held inside and not told for so long. Held them inside, and once they start coming up, they say, I don't want to write just bad things. And I'm saying, these are not bad things. These are the stories that you have to tell, to share with the world, so that people can connect, so that we can connect and say, I'm not so different. There is somebody else like me. And this is why we all have these different stories to tell, and why we have to have these big super bookstores and Amazon.com, because there are so many stories. Some of you will read nonfiction. Some of you, each of you probably have your own favorite author. I certainly have mine. And so we'll read by them. Somehow we connect, and not everybody's going to read Judy Reeves' book. Darn it. But you may get the same message from somebody else. It may come another way. And so this is why it's important for us to tell our own stories with our own voices, and to take them from the personal and into the global. And what I want to talk about this morning is, and the title of my talk is Taking Pen in Hand, How to Be a Writer Who Writes. We start writing, we back away from it. We don't have time for writing. Who has time for writing? We don't have time. It's not going to be given to us. We have to make the time for writing. And maybe it's just not important. Maybe it just doesn't matter. I come from this place as soon as. Any of you as soon as people? I tell you, this is what they're going to put on my gravestone. As soon as the kids are raised, as soon as the dishes are done, as soon as I finish that other project, as soon as, and then you wake up at a certain day and it is as soon as, and you haven't done the things that you want to do. And this applies to writing too, so you have to make the time. Some of us come to writing through language. Are any language people here? Because we love words. Words will stop us in our tracks. Some of us come to writing through storytelling. Who would you say are storytellers? We're all storytellers, but some people just naturally. When I was doing spelling words, when I was in third grade, so I'm like 8, 9 years old, and I'm doing spelling words, and I'm putting them in sentences. That was the assignment, to put the spelling words in sentences. I had that feeling, and that feeling when you're doing the thing that you're supposed to do. It's in the flow, I think is what the common term is. You're just outside yourself and into that, whatever it is. I had that feeling at 8 years old, writing those spelling words, using language that way. My friend Drusilla, who's written 16 novels, and even as I speak, she's home writing another novel. She used to sit at school, and she would have pieces of paper, and she'd start a story like this, and then she'd pass the paper back behind her, and then she'd write, so it'd go through the whole classroom, Drusilla's stories, and she just keeps writing the stories and sending them back. We need each other. Those of us who come through the language way need to learn how to shape the language into story. Those who tell stories need to learn how to use the language in such a way that it tells the story better. And so both of those things have to meld. And the way that it happens and how it happens, what I have found in my experience is through having a writing practice. And a writing practice is like any other kind of a practice that you do on a regular basis. A practice as in, we have to practice to get better. Mick Jagger says you have to sing every day to be, amazingly brilliant. And who doesn't want to be amazingly brilliant? But a practice also in the way, because we're not born knowing how to throw pots or blow glass or to paint or to write. We learn how to do the language, but we're not born knowing how to do that. So we need to learn to practice to get better. But also the writing practice that I'm talking about, the kind of writing practice that I recommend and I do myself on a regular basis, is more like a meditation practice, more like a yoga practice, something that you do on a regular basis that brings you that centers you in the world, that brings you into that place where you feel whole, that place where you're completely with yourself and doing the thing that gives you that kind of wholeness. So, and it is the daily attendance to the writing practice is how the books are going to get written and the pages are going to get filled. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how this writing practice, and you see you have your writing practice pages right in front of you, so we're going to do some of that later too, how this will enable you to get the book written so that as soon as is right now, so that as soon as is every day. So I come to writing through this writing practice school, and Flannery O'Connor calls it the writing habit, of having the habit of doing it. We don't necessarily think about making time to take a shower, or thinking about time to walk the dog, or thinking about time to brush our teeth. We just do these things, and we don't wait until we're inspired to drive to work. Oh, if we did. And I can't remember who said it, but it is, I'm going to go and sit at my writing desk every day at 8 o'clock, so when inspiration comes, it'll know where to find me. So this is how we have to do our writing practice as well. Not waiting for inspiration, but just sitting and doing the work. And the inspiration will come when we're doing the work. The muse likes to have a place set for her. So many of us who are writers won't claim ourselves as writers. I believe you were talking when you said you claim this for yourself and you claim that when you were talking about your birthday this morning. I claim joy. We don't claim ourselves as writers, and I think I know one of the reasons why we don't claim ourselves as writers. Writers are not to be trusted, you know. If you want to control the world, lock up the poets. I'm not sure who said that, but I've been looking for who said that quote, because it wasn't me, but I know that it's true. We're dangerous. We use our imaginations. We stir things up, you know. This is good. We need to do this. We need stir-uppers. But we don't claim ourselves as writers because, and any kind of art really is, we're not quite to be trusted. We're a little bohemian. We're a little outside that, get a job, go to work, produce something. What are you over there writing? Who cares if you write? You know, nobody cares if you write. So we don't claim ourselves as writers. And there's another reason that we don't claim ourselves as writers, and that's because when you say, I'm a writer, what's the first thing people say? What have you written? And you say, oh, I've written some short stories, you know, I fool around with some poems. And they say, oh, and the second thing? Have you been published? If you haven't been published, then you're not a writer. If you haven't been published, then you're not a writer. That's because being published gives some kind of validity to it. If you've been published, then the world says, yes, you're a writer. And so for us to say first we're a writer, I think a writer is someone who writes. A writer is someone who writes. And so that's all you have to do. But if we don't claim ourselves as writers, we're never going to make the time to write. It's not going to be important enough unless we say, I'm a writer, so I'm taking this time to write. And I'm going to do it at this time, or I'm going to do it at that time, or I'm going to do it at whatever time you set up for yourself. I'm a writer. I used to practice that in the mirror. I look at myself in the mirror. I'm a writer. And I couldn't, do it with a straight face. I'm a writer. So claiming yourself as a writer is the first step in creating some kind of a writing practice that will enable you to sustain so that you will get those pages filled and that you will get that book finished. So the second thing, once you have done this claiming of yourself as a writer and saying, I'm a writer, I'm writing a book, or I'm doing whatever, then you will make the time. And you have to find the time that works for you. And if you start off by saying, every day I'm going to come home from work and I'm going to write for 2 hours, chances are you're not. If you say, I'm going to get up, I could sooner come home from work and do the writing than I could get up at 5 a.m., 4 a.m. My friend Sarah Lewis would get up at 4 a.m., go in the laundry room before the kids woke up and be in there writing like this. at 4 o'clock in the morning. And maybe that's when some people's muse comes, but not mine. But find the time, and if you set your goals too high, you're probably not going to be able to attain them. 2 hours is a long time to sustain when, on a day, if you say, I'm going to do it every day. New Year's resolutions, what is it, like 80%? I've already broken mine. I said I was going to blog weekly, and I've done 1 blog so far this year. So 80% of the New Year's resolutions are broken, so that kind of thing is not going to help us. So, okay, 10 minutes a day. I can find 10, 15 minutes a day to write. And that's what it takes. I'm going to make that 10 minutes a day. When I first decided about this book and was talking about doing this book, I was going to do a calendar because I thought what we need is we need to make an appointment with ourselves, because you would not, if you promised someone you would be here this morning, you would not show up. You would show up. If you have a dentist appointment and you can't come, you don't just not go. You call and say, I can't do it. We don't do that with some of the things that we promise that we'll do for ourselves, like writing, for example. So if you make an appointment with yourself and you put it on your calendar, I'm going to do my daily writing practice at noon today, so you put it on your daily calendar. That's what the book was going to be. And I was going to have a writing prompt for every day. And I'll tell you why I was going to have a writing prompt for every day in a minute. But the point is that you make an appointment with yourself. I'm going to take a half an hour and I'm going to do my writing practice. And put it on your calendar and sit down. New World Library said, well, we don't really do calendars, so could you do a book? And I said, yeah, I could do a book. I'd never done a book before, but yeah, I could do a book. And so that's how it became a book instead of a calendar. But I am going to do that calendar because I think this is really important for us to make that date with ourselves and put it on our calendar. So then you have the time. Now you claimed yourself as a writer. Now you have the time to write. And what are you going to write about? Has this ever happened to you? Got the time, got your pen, you're ready to go? What is scarier than this? Or you're sitting here with your fingers just kind of like vibrating above the keyboard, like little hummingbirds. And as soon as you put that first word on the page, it's the wrong word, you've already ruined the page. I'm going to say something here about ideas and how we can't get ideas onto the paper. It's because ideas aren't language. Ideas are more intuitive kinds of imagery things. And once you start wrapping language around them, which language is so concrete and specific, so what your idea is never going to be exactly on the page. So just so that you know that. But choosing the right first word. This is why I stopped writing my fiction on the computer, because I could hardly get my first sentence down before I was editing it, because it was wrong. It's always wrong. The first sentence is always wrong. Do you know how many times I made my notes? How many times I started my notes? I got up at 3 o'clock this morning and I knew my notes were wrong. That was after I went down to the business center at 11:30 last night to change my notes so that my introduction would be right. So then, I don't know if you saw me over there, probably not, but I was over there scratching my notes this morning too, sitting over there. I sat in my car for a few minutes, getting that right introduction. What's the right first word? Well, there isn't a right first word. There isn't. None of them is going to be right. And so just go with the one that comes. That's what I say. And this is why the other thing about writing practice and why I believe in it so much and why it works for so many people is because we start with a writing prompt. And when you start with a writing prompt, you don't have to know the right word or the wrong word. You just get to start. That prompt is like music that invites you to dance. It's like the starting blocks for a runner, that you push off and you're ready to go around the track. And it doesn't matter what the prompt is. You have written your own prompt there, by the way. And so this book has a prompt for every day. What happens when we have prompts? I'm going to just read you a prompt or two out of here. What happens when we have a prompt? Okay, March 17th, an emergency exit. It's not describe one. It's not tell a story about one. It's just an emergency exit. And I bet each and every one of you got some kind of an image in your mind, some kind of a little picture, a detail in your mind about either an emergency exit, about the word exit, about emergency. Something came for you. So what you do with writing practice is you grab the tail end, or any part of this detail that you can, any part of that image that you can get a hold of, you grab it, you jump on board, and you take it for a ride. However long you've given yourself, 10 minutes, 17 minutes. I can't go writing by hand longer than 20 minutes. I get hand cramps. So there you go, and you're off. And what will happen is this: well, I don't want to write about an emergency exit. Never mind. You're just getting the pen moving. Once you get the pen moving, you're going to hopefully surrender to the page. You're going to stop thinking. The thing that you were trying to do when you were looking for that right word is you were thinking, and you were doing what that left side of your brain does best, which is measure, judge, evaluate, analyze. You're trying to fill the form with something that is the right thing, and we love our brains for being able to do this, but it really gets in the way when you're writing. What you want to do is get into that place where you're outside yourself. You're not self-conscious. The ego has stepped aside. The editor, we don't know. Maybe she's gone out for coffee, sharpening her pencils or whatever she's doing, because there you are. So you start writing, and you're not writing it about, each one of us has a story about an emergency exit. As you begin writing this story, what you want to write about is going to show up on the page. Organically, it's going to come. It may not be the story that you intended to write, but it's the story that wants to be told. And we can't always say, this is the story I want to tell. We have to let the stories come through us. If you keep pushing those stories away, they're going to keep showing up again and again. If you keep stopping them from writing them, if you keep stopping that, it's going to be whatever you try to write, there's always going to be the guard at the palace gate that says, who goes there? And every time who goes there you have to say and identify, then you're not writing what authentic stories want to be written. Instead, you're writing what you think should be written, or you think you want to write. And so writing in this way, to be a writer who continues to write, you have to surrender to the page. You have to surrender to the process. You have to allow that free fall to happen. And boy, that's scary. There isn't anything we like more than being in control. And when you turn yourself over to your art, you have lost control. And this gets so scary because anything can happen. And it can be very dangerous for us. It can be very dangerous for telling secrets that we said we'd never tell. It can be very dangerous for just exposing ourselves, being vulnerable on the page. And I'm not just talking about the kinds of maybe things that you would tell that would be deep secrets that your mother wouldn't want you to tell. You know, not those kinds of family secrets. It is that being vulnerable on the page. Like, if you know that I am so insecure about how I'm going to start my talk today that I get up at 3 a.m. to rewrite if I put that on the page and let you know how vulnerable I am, are you going to like me? Are you going to respect me? Are you going to accept me? Are you going to accept me? Or are you going to reject me? And so that's why it's so scary to put what we are on the page. There it is, concrete, black and white. Yikes. When I'm doing writing practice and I get to a scary place, I can even see the difference in my handwriting. My handwriting, instead of this when I'm open and loose and really moving, and my handwriting is just flowing like this. And once I get to those dangerous places, you can even tell, your body will tell you, your hands get, my writing gets really cramped. I stop breathing, I have to do this again and again. Breathe again and again to loosen up, it's okay. Because the thing about writing practice, and when you're just writing in your notebook and you're doing this kinds of thing, it's not for publication. This is raw first draft stuff. You're going to work with this. This first draft stuff is not what is the book. I mean, none of us, it never comes out perfect in first draft. Well, maybe once, I don't know anybody when it has ever come out perfect. Maybe one word, maybe one image, maybe there's something. And this is why we call them drafts, and why you have 75 endings to as the sun also rises. I think that's what I've heard. 72 endings. Somebody said to Hemingway, why'd you write it so many times? He says, I couldn't get the words right. You know, this is what it takes. All of these drafts, we write it, just get the story down. If you will write every day for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, in 17 minutes by hand, I can get about 450 words. I have some statistics here. I wrote them down because I don't have them memorized. Let me see if I can find these. How wonderful this is and what will happen if you do this on a daily basis. Okay. If you do 20 minutes a day, you get 400 or so words. The number of words in a good book is fewer than 100,000. So 250 20-minute sessions and you got your book. That's less than a year. 250, I think a baby would be about 2 weeks premature in 250 days. So that's how long it takes to do that. Page a day, 365 pages. How many pages in a good book? 300, 285, 315. Page a day. It's like the Swiss cheese method of writing, you know? You go after it every day, you do a little bit. If you wait until until you can go to that garret in Paris, you know, if you wait until you can get away on a writing retreat, here's another thing I want to tell you about writing practice and doing it on a regular daily basis. Can we go to 8:30?
Let me give you another 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. The thing about doing it every day is that when you sit down at the page, then your body knows, and it's like you click into that intuitive way. I'm ready to write now. Like when you lay on a massage table, how your body gets ready to accept the massage. When you get ready to run, how you kind of warm up and you're ready to go and you can do it. It's the same thing that happens with your writing. If you will do it every day, you won't hesitate. The writing will come easier. It will get better. You will enjoy it more because you're going to get used to it. It won't be difficult. You will just sit down and you will just do it every day, 10 minutes. We're going to do 7 minutes right now. Okay, you have in front of you a writing practice page. You have a pen. You have a pen. And so I'm going to give you a prompt, or you can use your detail that you got. I'm going to give you, today is January the 11th. No, today is January the 12th. And here's the prompt. And so you can use it any way you want to. You can write fiction, you can write nonfiction, you can write memoir, you can write a poem. You don't even have to write to the prompt. Here's the prompt. In the distance. In the distance. We're going to go for 5 minutes, and I'm going to keep track of the time. We can have some people read them. Thank you, Patrick. Very generous man. take about another minute. Okay, see if you can find a place to end. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a beginning and a middle and an end. It just means if you can find a place to put a period. And if you were going someplace, and this often happens to me, you know, the warm-up, I'm headed someplace and I don't quite get there. So if you knew where you were going, you might want to make a note of an image that you had or a phrase that you were aiming for or something so that you won't forget it. Because even though we swear, we'll never forget these things. They're like dreams, you know, they just kind of fade with as the day goes on. So how was that? Yeah, wow, what happened? You just started writing? Did anybody stop and think? I saw a couple of pens, because that's the thing. Usually in my classes, on the whiteboard, I make a big circle and I put think and I draw a line through it. No thinking. Oh, and the other one is nice, and I draw a line through that. We don't want to be nice either. So, so this is what can happen. And did anybody go astray from where they started off on a completely different track? Was great?
Is that because it was structured? It had a beginning and an end?
You know, there's something about the timed writings, and I do this. I set my timer for myself, even when I'm writing pieces of my novel sometimes, and I just want to get myself out of the way. I will set my timer because there's an intensity that is created with that, and so anybody, you know, you're focused. There's an intensity, and you just keep the pen moving, and that's what makes the difference, I think. So using the timer will really support you in this kind of writing. And then when I have gone through my 18 minutes and I'm not done with what I'm doing, I reset the timer and I do it again. And that just keeps my pen to the page instead. Because once my mind starts wandering off, you know, I'm good for half an hour anyway, you know, without getting any more words down. And it doesn't matter what the words are, because we just want to get something on the page. And then we got something to work with. Now we can invite that wonderful brain that we have that does the analyzing and does the, you know, judging and does all of this. We can say, now you come in and you tell me, what do I need here? And so we go through the page and say, you know what, there's everything in here is all sight, you know, that all of my descriptions are about what I see. I don't see anything about hearing. There's no smells here. I'm going to lay those on. So, you know, you go through the different drafts. I changed tense here. The name, I started off with Mavis, and now she's Enid down here. How did that happen? I don't know. It doesn't matter. When you're doing this kind of writing practice, as soon as you stop to think, you bounce yourself out of the story. And it's hard to come back in. You have to keep going up, you know, in and out, and it becomes difficult. So when something comes and you can't think of, for example, the zip code for Portland, Oregon, just never mind. Just draw, you know, my writing looks like Emily Dickinson poetry with all those dashes, you know, because I can't think of things. And the older I get, the less I can think of things. It was Bork yesterday, you know, that Icelandic singer. I could not think of her name until, you know, kept scratching out. Finally, it came to me. Thank you, wherever those things come from, that when they finally connect, those synapses. So don't stop to think. Just keep going. Just keep going. And then you invite the editor in, and the editor, and then you can do the thinking. When you're thinking and you say, oh, you know what I need here? I need a scene between these two people, or I want to describe this particular incident that happened. Then you move back to the other phase and you drop once again into the free writes, like, you know, we call them free writes, this kind of timed writing practice, and get that raw stuff out again. Then you put it back into your manuscript. We can do questions and answers now. Oh, yes. Okay.
What I noticed, I am a writer, and I have been published, but just in magazines.
Wait.
But
Wait,
just in
what was the
magazines. Okay,
just?
sorry
What was
about
the
that. Okay. But what I noticed when you gave me this prompt is that when I was writing, I was trying to catch up with my images.
Yes,
I mean, I was trying. My mind, I couldn't write fast enough.
I know.
To get up to where I was going, and that's.
And
never
many
really
people say, you know, I don't like to write by hand because I can't keep up with my thoughts. And I'm saying, that's okay. You know, you got so many of them. You know, they're going to just slow down and let them come and let them come and let them come. And then you do rewrites and you do revises. But I know this is true. And writing by hand, I mean, sometimes we get going so fast. What people often say when they read their work out loud in my writing groups, when we do writing practice groups, I can't read my own handwriting. And it's exactly because we just, there's so much we want to say, it can just pour out. And if you learn to do this kind of writing and you breathe with it and slow down, you know, you'll get the ones. You'll get the ones. Yeah. I know.
I have them.
Yes.
I'm next.
Good.
Say more about longhand versus typing on computer,
Okay.
and also what kind of writing? What is a blog? What kind of writing is blogging?
Blogging is blogging. I mean, I know a lot of people don't look at blogging as real writing, you know, and I think a lot of people they think maybe blogging doesn't have to be as edited, you know, just like what's happening with email, how we're ruining the language and our grammar and our punctuation and all of that with email. And I think a lot of people get a little sloppy in their blogs, but it's however you want to do it. But blogging is blogging. It's a new, different kind of writing. Just, you know, it's kind of journalish, but it's also kind of for the public. Handwriting versus typing on the keys. Here's what happens. The writing muscles, heart, hand, breath. And so so your writing is a muscular thing. It's a physical thing that we do. We do it with our bodies. And especially the breathing gives us the rhythm for our writing. It's so important to do the breathing. And what happens often when we go with the keyboard, then we have this and we have our eyes on the keyboard. And on the monitor. And so often what happens is the brain, we disconnect from our bodies and the brain interferes and we start editing rather than just letting it go. Some people, I write my nonfiction on the computer and my fiction by hand. I do all my writing practice by hand. And so I stopped doing fiction by hand because I couldn't stop editing. So I invite people to turn their monitor off if they want to use this because they just feel like so much more comfortable. Just turn your monitor off so you don't see what you're doing, you know, so you can't read the words. And then go back and do it. But I really urge you to do some writing by hand, even if you're used to using the computer, just to get back in touch with your body. Let your breath support you. Let your heartbeat give you a rhythm for it. And I think I can hang out and answer more questions. And I know that we have about 1 minute left, according to Patrick. Yes.
You just answered my question about the difference between typing and handwriting, but thanks.
Oh, good.
Anything else you want to say? Because I write successfully both ways, but they're
I
different.
do too. They're different. Yeah.
How
How is
why
it
that?
different?
Yeah.
I think when I'm writing my nonfiction, I have a destination. When I'm writing fiction, I don't know where I'm going. And I think that might be part of it, but I can't say that this is true for sure. I think we have to stop. And I want to thank you so much, and I want to encourage you. Thank you.